Welcome back. You're watching Reporter's Diary. Let's discuss the government's borrowing program a little more. The first half, at least, has been revealed. Joining us to discuss this is Siddharth Sanyal from Barclays. Hi, Siddhartha, for joining us on CNBC TV 18. Shakti Kanta Das, the Economic Affairs Secretary, saying the first half, the gross borrowing is going to be 3.55 lakh crore rupees. It's going to meet 59% of the requirement for the full year. If I could get your initial reaction.
This seems to be a decent number for the market to manage because typically in the first half you get to see slightly higher proportion. So there is no reason prima facie for the market to be unhappy. Some of the other factors are also helping at this moment. For example, the inflation prints are surprising on the downside. The budget, by and large, had been on the line of prudence and consolidation, and the expectation of more rate hikes in the near term from the RBI is pretty strong. So overall, all these factors.
Rate hike or rate cut?
Sorry, rate cuts. Rate cuts very clearly. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a little surprised when I heard rate hike.
Yeah, very clearly rate
So if you look at the gross borrowing of 3.55 lakh crore rupees and the net borrowing, which has been announced as 2.48 lakh crore rupees, so you're saying that this is along expected lines?
Yes. Broadly, the first half share in overall borrowing is typically in between 60 to 65%. If it is announced at 59%, it's slightly marginally better than the usual trend.
I know you also have WMA limit for April to September set at 50,000 crore rupees. You have 27,000 crore rupees via T-bills. That's for the first quarter from April to June. How do you react to this kind of a borrowing calendar as well, if I get down to the fine print?
Well, we need to see it a little more closely. I don't see any huge surprise in these outcomes. But I think in case of the bond market, one particular factor people would like to, or a couple of factors people would like to be very clear about going ahead. It's not only the central government's borrowing which will be important for market going ahead. What will also be very important that how much the state borrowing come up over the course of the next few months. So that will also have some kind of a bearing on the overall market sentiment, and what kind of liquidity infusion, particularly via OMOs, the RBI continue to do. I think this will be some of the important factors going ahead for the market.
So you're saying no surprises as such, but if I look at the commitment by the government, at least announced in the budget, to meet the fiscal deficit target of 3.5%. So would you have, if you had to estimate and project, would it have been the kind of figures that have been announced today?
See, that part was known that, after the budget, it was known that the borrowing number for the whole year was known. So today the new information is what proportion of that will be done in the first half of the year. And what I'm saying, that number is either no surprise or you have to interpret it as slightly positive for the market.
Okay. How do you expect the money markets to react?
Well, it will depend on a few factors, but most of the, for example, how exactly trends in the inflation going ahead we get to see in the next few weeks, or even how whether there is some additional guidance on the part of the RBI in terms of additional liquidity operations. But those will come over a period of time, over the course of the next few days or next few weeks. But by and large, this is a decent outcome at this moment.
So decent outcome. So that I also wanted to get your feedback on this committee that has been set up. A cash coordination committee is going to be made up of the Finance Ministry, the RBI, as well as the CAG, is going to meet on a monthly basis to discuss the cash position of the government. How do you react to this?
Well, we really need to see how exactly in terms of fine prints of the operations it pan out. But if it leads to a situation that there is better and more effective utilization of the cash, which is often stuck up with RBI, it's government's cash. If it comes to the market in terms of some auction route or something of that sort, that will possibly offer market or some bit of relief in terms of additional liquidity. So that should be seen as a positive. But we really would have to wait for the finer details and how exactly things pan out on that front.
And Siddhartha, we're running out of time, so my final question to you. In the budget speech, Arun Jaitley also said there's going to be a new committee that's going to be set up to, discuss the FRBM Act, if any amendments are required, or whether there should be a range, for example, that has been discussed in the past. If that were to go ahead and the committee were to suggest that we should switch to a range, etc., I would imagine there would be no change in the borrowing program, but I want to get your views on it.
Very clearly, what he mentioned that the committee will look into the fiscal deficit targets for subsequent years. But what we know for 2016-17, it's very unlikely that that particular number will undergo a change. So I don't see any major risk because of that for markets as such.
Siddhartha Sanyal, always a pleasure to have you here on CNBC TV 18. That's Siddhartha Sanyal of Barclays with his views on the government's borrowing program that has been announced just a few minutes back by Shaktikanta Das, the Economic Affairs Secretary. Siddhartha Sanyal saying there are no surprises. It's pretty much along what was being expected.